Hey everyone, it's Jim
And Charles
from Valves and More, an online vintage tube store. And today in Tube Lab number 266, we're going to talk a little bit about audio resolution and stability. But first, caution everyone, electronics and tube amplifiers can have very high voltages present, which can be lethal. Exercise extreme caution when working around them. Always consult a professional technician when in doubt. Describing resolution isn't easy, but Charles suggested we use taking a photo as an example. Let's say you're trying to take a great HDR digital photo. The camera relies on taking a bunch of photos at different exposures and stitching them together to get the full dynamic range. If you take that series of photos with a camera that isn't mounted on a tripod, then instability will lead to small variations in each image that can cause the final result to look poorly defined and blurry. The same thing happens with print film, though a little bit different. It's an analog process. The amount of blur will depend on how much the camera was moving while the image was being captured. The same thing happens in audio. In the digital domain, the biggest culprit is jitter. That's when the bits entering the DAC are not perfectly timed. But what about an all analog system? We don't have any digital, nothing, so we're good, aren't we? 3 question marks. Nope. In an analog playback system, typically a turntable and vinyl records, but this also applies to all tape systems. In fact, all mechanical playback systems or record systems, we have wow and flutter. What is described as wow and flutter has changed over the years, but to put it simply, it is playback speed variations that introduce varying frequencies during playback. Obviously, we don't want any wow and flutter, but that's just not possible. So what we want is as little as possible. And that brings us to my latest turntable upgrade and the significant difference it made. Let's head over to the music room and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, well, welcome back to the music room. I'm actually over here, but I'm not the subject that we're talking about. The subject that we're interested in is our much modified Project RPM Genie version, I think 1.5, but it's got so many changes on it now from the way I bought it originally many years ago that Charles is calling it the
Franken Genie.
So, which is it's actually it's not a good way to look at it. Every time I've made an improvement on this turntable, it's gotten better until recently. And what happened is that originally the table came with the DC motor, and then the DC motor died, just like this. So all that the manufacturer had available was an AC synchronous replacement. It's the same basic size and shape of motor. And it worked quite well for a while. AC synchronous, by the way, just means that the motor speed is taken off of the frequency of the mains power, the AC mains power.
And that's 60 hertz in most of the world.
Yeah, but in parts of the world it's 50 hertz. And
if you're in Japan, you're lucky to have both.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's divided, what, east-west?
North-south, actually.
North-south.
Yeah.
They got 2 different companies to install the electrical system way back in, what, the 1920s and 30s?
Mm-hmm.
And
one of them, I think, was actually Western Electric, amazingly.
Yeah. So, but anyways, what 60 hertz means is that the AC sine power cycles through 60 times a second. So, anyways, AC synchronous is very easy on speed regulation. DC motors, it's tougher. But this motor started dying, and at that point I thought, well, I need a new turntable. And I've thought this a number of times, and I've gone shopping a number of times, and every time I go shopping to see if I can upgrade what I actually have, I end up looking at spending $5,000 to $10,000 minimum. And I thought, Well, I don't mind spending $5,000 or $10,000 if I get something fantastic. Well, I can barely afford $5,000, but let's say I had the $5,000 and I was willing to spend it. I thought, well, if the motor is a problem here, let's take a look at the specs and what kind of motor I get for $5,000. Well, I get this kind of motor. Sometimes you can't see it. It's buried in the turntable, but if you poke around for pictures, you can eventually find out that they've put a $20 motor on a $5,000 turntable, or something like that. So that got me really disheartened. And then I thought, well, what if I can find an aftermarket motor? A really great aftermarket motor. And I did. I got lucky. I found a gentleman who sells these things. I sent him a note. He replied back. And I said, you know, my biggest concerns are vibration. This thing was inducing noise into the stylus, into the pickup. Wow and flutter had increased as this motor had aged. And he said, no, the motor is going to be dead quiet. And, you know, the wow and flutter is going to be negligible. And the specs that he was showing said that. So I thought, that motor is going to cost more than the entire turntable with cartridge cost originally. But maybe it'll be good. So I took a chance. It was buyer protected. I installed it. And with Charles's help, we made a 3D mount to get it to the right height. I kept this isolation pad that I've been using to try and fix the vibration off of here. And, you know, everything just lined up. It worked really well. And in 3 seconds of running the new turntable with the new motor, well, the old turntable with the new motor, I knew right away that my resolution had snapped into focus. There's no other way to describe it, which led me to understand that I've been living with a little bit too much wow and flutter for years, literally. And I just simply learned to live with it.
At least until it really started getting worse as that motor started to fail.
That's right. I mean, originally when we put the motor in and we checked the wow and flutter, it was fine. Mm-hmm. So it had started to deteriorate. So maybe it's only been months that I've been actually living with that.
Yeah, it's probably a failing bearing that caused it, but you know, it could be any number of things.
Yeah. Now, how do you check for wow and flutter? You know, let's say you've got a vinyl playback system and that is your system. You're not thinking about upgrading it, and you know, more power to you, because upgrading costs some serious money. Well, believe it or not, there is built into many cell phones.
Mm-hmm. There's accelerometers, gyroscopes, and if you put the right software on them, you can actually measure the rotational speed pretty accurately.
So the way it works is you just bring up the software or the app, and Charles will put a link below the video so that you can actually find the bloody thing.
Yeah, someone was nice enough to make a free app for this. This is for Android devices, but I'll check if there is one for iOS, and I'll put the link for that too.
Yeah, and we've been using this for years, and it is amazing. I actually have an extra phone that I keep around the turntable, and just for this purpose. You know, it's connected to the Wi-Fi, but I can't make calls, but whatever. Anyways, so, you know, we just push start. I'm not going to put it on the turntable right now. I'm just going to show you how it basically gets going. So essentially the turntable will come up to speed. And that's something that's really important to mention. When you're measuring wow and flutter, whether it's with a reel-to-reel tape machine or whether it's with a turntable, you want to do it at room temperature. You want to do it with the machine warmed up, essentially. If you haven't changed the bearing oil or topped up the bearing oil or cleaned the bearing mechanism and re-greased it, whatever your manufacturer recommends. In this case, I use a light synthetic grease it's almost like Vaseline. It's very, very light, and wow, did that ever make a difference? So it wasn't dirty, it just lubrication wasn't up to spec. Anyways, it says it's not a real turntable speed at -0. Okay, so let's reset, and I'm going to put it on here, and I'm going to push start. Now, I haven't warmed the turntable up at all. It's just, been sitting here overnight, but we're going to let it run, and through the magic of editing, Charles will cut this, and in a second I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, Shazam, we're back. So that's the results. We're at 33.24 on 33 and a third RPM. We're minus 0.29%, and we can actually see the plus and the minus. Well, the minus is 0.3, the plus is 0.2, and we can graph it. Now, the graph is really quite useful because it shows you essentially the wow and flutter in a real timeline. And you should have seen what this motor was, the old motor was doing. It was just unbelievable how bad the wow and flutter was. Now, this minus 0.29% will get tighter with a little bit of run-in on the turntable, and it'll improve. But this gives us a really good idea of what the wow and flutter is. We can look at it, and if vinyl playback is how you mostly listen to music, I would say I'm about half digital and half vinyl these days, and this will help you determine if you've got a problem at the motor stage with, essentially the rotation of the platter. And I can tell you, for all of my years as an audiophile with vinyl, people have talked about and written about ad infinitum about the need for a good quality cartridge, a tone arm that doesn't have bad resonances, a good stable platform for the turntable, isolation or a chassis that's isolated, all of this sort of stuff. A good record clamp. That's something we didn't use 40 years ago, but now I find essential because I don't use a record map. But almost never did anybody actually talk about the quality of the motor driving the platter, which is ridiculous, right? Because it's probably, after the cartridge, the motor is probably the most important part of the bloody turntable. So,
and it's treated like one of those things where it either works or it doesn't.
Yeah. So anyways, so hopefully that helps some of you out. And I think we should head over now and see what Charles has got that came in. Okay, well, we had these tubes on the opening screen, and this is both a sad and exciting moment.
Yeah.
Sad because
we don't have many of these left, and they're getting harder to find, just like their 6-volt cousins. And
it's even worse than that. We had hundreds of premium 12-volt versions of 6SN7s in stock. We had lots of Tongue Tall Boys. We had a huge number of Sylvania Bad Boys.
We had a bunch of mouse ear tongue saws as well, and all the stocks on those amazing vintage tubes are starting to go down as other manufacturers start building for 12-volt tubes, just like we have, as our customers have been stocking up on these tubes, just like we've been recommending. We're running out of them, just like the 6-volt counterparts. So I was able to find a number of really beautiful, good used 12-volt bad boys, and we've made up a couple more matched pairs that are now in the store, and they aren't going to last long. We're not finding too many of them anymore. We're hoping to make more matches in the future.
Well, how old are they? I mean, the last year of production was 1952, so that means that they're, 74? The youngest tube is 74 years old, and the oldest tube is more like 85, 86 years old.
Yeah. So they just don't show up. And whenever they do, if they're not new old stock or very, very close to it, they tend to be noisy or not testing very good. As you can see, these guys are actually testing bang on for new old stock like they should be.
Why don't you show everybody that one of the key indicators for many tubes to look for when you're trying to determine what kind of hours or condition the tube is in.
Yeah, so we're going to look at the getter here. You see this flashing? You see how we don't have a white ring?
Or fading.
There's a little bit of fading around the edges, but that's not that uncommon whenever you have a large getter around the bottom. Let's take a look at the other guy here. Again, we don't have a white ring. So that is typical whenever a tube is starting to get gassy. You'll see it slowly starting to creep in from the edges of the gettering. It also implies that it's had a lot of cycles of heating up and cooling down, and that means it has a lot of hours on it.
So this tube actually is very close to a new old stock
Very
tube,
close,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah, but visually it has some marks on the base, so we can't sell it as new old stock, so we don't.
So probably what this is a military pull,
It could be.
or even a pull from home audio equipment. But a lot of the stuff that we've been finding in the last 4 or 5 years that is in this kind of condition, i.e. almost no hours on the tube, very good condition overall, have come out of decommissioned military equipment.
Yeah, yeah. And
That basically was sitting on the shelf and essentially never used or fired up occasionally to make sure it's operational.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So these are fantastic. We have a couple pairs of them. I'm hoping we'll be able to make more, but of course I can't guarantee it. I mean, the actual 6-volt bad boys have just about dried up. We don't find them anymore.
Yeah, and it's too bad because every time I went down into our little warehouse, I would see trays of new old stock, new in the box, tongues and bad boys. And I would feel rich. Well, rich in the sense that we had these tubes available for our customers. And now I feel sad because those trays are almost empty.
Yeah, I mean, we still do have plenty of great 12-volt tubes, but these really high-in-demand vintage ones that everybody is looking for, they're running down just like their 6-volt versions.
Yeah. So here's a tip. You've heard me say this a number of times, and it's not a sales pitch. This is a tip. If there's a tube that you are particularly in love with, and I don't care if we have it or somebody else has it, if you have a little bit of money to invest and you don't have backups for that particular tube that you really like a lot, make sure as soon as you find something at a reasonably affordable price,
Get a backup in.
get backups in.
Yeah.
Because they're just not going to last forever. We're at that point where many of the tubes that we handle that are older than this are now at their century mark, believe it or not. I always judge whether a tube's really old as to whether it's older than my dad. Because my dad had some great stories about walking past the Marconi factory in Montreal, which was an entire city block square. And I'm not talking about a short block, a long block. It was immense. It would take forever just to walk past the factory. So you can imagine how big it was. And of course, they didn't make just vacuum tubes, though they made a lot of vacuum tubes. They also made all kinds of radio equipment and stuff like that, so electronic gear. Anyways, enough with the stories.
Yep.
This is Jim,
And Charles.
signing off. Cheers, everyone.